When you bite into a rich, decadent bar of gourmet chocolate, what are you tasting? The cacao bean, of course. But the real story, the secret ingredient, is something you can't see. It's an invisible multitude, a microscopic orchestra that turns a bitter, tropical seed into the luxury we adore. Today, on G Fun Facts Online, we're uncovering the microbial symphony behind chocolate. An odyssey of flavor, a journey from a humble tropical fruit to an exquisite chocolate bar, is a tale not of a single ingredient, but of a microscopic multitude. This is the story of the microbial symphony behind gourmet chocolate, an intricate and harmonious collaboration of invisible organisms that transform the raw, bitter seeds of the Theobroma cacao tree into the complex and celebrated confection we cherish. Before this incredible transformation, the cacao bean is a shadow of its future self. Imagine cracking open a vibrant cacao pod. Inside, you find beans coated in a sweet, sticky, white pulp. If you were to taste the bean itself, you'd be in for a shock. It's intensely bitter, almost unpleasantly astringent. It has none of the deep, complex aromas we associate with chocolate. If you just dried and roasted these raw beans, you'd get something flat, chalky, and frankly, disappointing. The potential for greatness lies dormant, locked within the bean's chemistry. The key to unlocking that potential, the secret that has been practiced for centuries, often without understanding the science, is a process called fermentation. The journey begins the moment the pods are opened. Farmers heap the beans and their pulp into piles or large wooden boxes, often covering them with banana leaves. This creates a warm, moist, and sugary environment, a perfect invitation for the first musicians in our microbial orchestra to arrive, the yeasts. These are naturally occurring yeasts from the farm's air, the equipment, and the farmer's hands. This initial stage happens without oxygen, in what scientists call an anaerobic environment. A diverse cast of yeasts gets to work, including a very famous one, Saccharomyces cerevisiae. Yes, the exact same species used to make bread and beer. Along with other species like Pichia and Hansinia spora, these yeasts feast on the sugars in the pulp, the glucose, fructose, and sucrose. Through alcoholic fermentation, they convert these sugars into ethanol and carbon dioxide. But they do more than just make booze. They produce enzymes that break down the pectin in the pulp, turning the thick goo into a liquid that can drain away. This is vital because it allows air to eventually get to the beans later on. More importantly for the final taste, these yeasts generate the very first building blocks of chocolate's complex flavor. They create volatile organic compounds, like higher alcohols and esters, which are responsible for the fruity and floral notes you might detect in a high-quality chocolate bar. Studies have shown that without yeasts, these crucial flavor precursors simply wouldn't exist, and the final product would lack that characteristic chocolate taste. After about a day or two, as the yeasts have done their initial work, the conditions in the fermenting pile start to change. This signals the entrance of our next group of performers, the lactic acid bacteria, or LAB for short. You might know these from foods like yogurt and sourdough. Species like Lactobacillus fermentum and Lactobacillus plantarum take over. They can thrive in low-oxygen environments and continue to break down any remaining sugars, but their star contribution is producing lactic acid. This further increases the acidity of the fermenting mass. Some of these bacteria also metabolize the citric acid naturally found in the pulp. Consuming this acid actually causes the pH to rise slightly, a critical change that sets the stage for the next microbial wave. While scientists once debated their importance, it's now clear that these bacteria are key to creating complexity. The lactic acid they produce adds to the overall tang and can lead to unique flavor notes. Studies using specific LAB starter cultures have even produced chocolates with distinct hints of honey and red fruit. They are the harmony in our symphony, adding depth and nuance to the emerging flavor profile. Now we reach the crescendo. As the pulp liquefies and drains away, air starts to penetrate the mass of beans. This introduction of oxygen is a game changer. It's the cue for the final and perhaps most dramatic act from our microbial cast: the acetic acid bacteria, or AAB. These bacteria, including species like Acetobacter pasteurianus, are strictly aerobic, meaning they need oxygen to do their job. And what is their job? They take the ethanol produced by the yeasts and oxidize it into acetic acid, which you know as the main component of vinegar. This chemical reaction is highly exothermic, meaning it releases a ton of heat. The temperature inside the fermenting pile can soar to 45 or even 50 degrees Celsius. That's up to 122 degrees Fahrenheit. This combination of intense heat and penetrating acetic acid is what truly transforms the bean from the inside out. The acid seeps into the bean and kills the embryo, preventing it from sprouting. This is the critical trigger. The bean's internal cell walls break down, allowing enzymes and other molecules that were kept separate to finally mix and react. This is where the real magic happens internally. Inside the bean, the hot, acidic environment activates the bean's own enzymes. Enzymes called proteases start breaking down large storage proteins into smaller peptides and free amino acids. These amino acids, like leucine and valine, are the essential precursors for the flavors of roasting. At the same time, the acid helps oxidize compounds called polyphenols. These are what make the raw bean so bitter and astringent. This oxidation not only mellows out that harshness, but also leads to the formation of compounds that contribute to the classic brown color and rich, nutty flavors of chocolate. So the acetic acid bacteria are like the fiery conductors of the orchestra, bringing everything to a powerful climax. They kill the bean, heat it up, and kickstart the internal chemical reactions that create the very molecules that will become chocolate flavor during roasting. At the end of this 5 to 7 day fermentation, the once bitter seed is now packed with flavor precursors. It's been fundamentally rewired, ready for the final steps of drying and roasting. During roasting, those amino acids and reducing sugars created during fermentation will undergo the famous Maillard reaction, generating hundreds of new aromatic compounds, the nutty, toasty, and deeply chocolatey notes we all love. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. Just like wine has terroir, where the soil and climate affect the taste of the grape, chocolate has a microbial terroir. The specific community of yeasts and bacteria is unique to each farm, each region, even each harvest. The microbes in Madagascar are different from the ones in Ecuador or Vietnam. This microbial fingerprint is a huge reason why single-origin chocolates have such distinct and recognizable flavor profiles. A Madagascan chocolate might be famous for its bright red fruit notes, while an Ecuadorian one might be more floral. A large part of that difference comes down to the unique microbial orchestra that performed the fermentation. This natural variation is what connoisseurs love, but it can be a headache for large companies that need their chocolate bars to taste exactly the same every single time. This leads us to the future of chocolate making. To gain more control and consistency, scientists and chocolatiers are now developing starter cultures. Think of it like using a specific strain of yeast to brew a particular type of beer. By adding a pre-selected mix of beneficial yeasts and bacteria at the start of fermentation, producers can guide the process toward a desired outcome. This not only ensures consistency and reduces the risk of spoilage from bad microbes, but it opens the door to creating designer chocolate. Want a chocolate with an intense berry or citrus profile? You could select yeast strains known to produce those specific fruity esters. Want to enhance honey notes? There are lactic acid bacteria for that. This isn't about replacing the art of chocolate making, but augmenting it with science. It gives makers another tool. They can choose to rely on the wild, spontaneous fermentation to capture that unique microbial terroir. Or they can use a starter culture to consistently craft a very specific flavor profile. So the journey from a cacao pod to a chocolate bar is an odyssey of flavor conducted by an unseen world of microorganisms. It is a breathtakingly complex and elegant symphony of succession, The yeasts perform the overture, creating alcohol and fruity notes. The lactic acid bacteria provide the harmony, adding layers of acidic complexity. And the acetic acid bacteria conduct the fiery crescendo, transforming the bean from the inside out. Each group plays an indispensable role, paving the way for the next. The next time you unwrap a piece of fine chocolate and let it melt on your tongue, remember the invisible artists responsible for its magic. In every single bite, you are tasting the delicious, final notes of a microbial symphony.